Welcome once again. Uh, Today we are going to look at market structures and we'll start off with perfectly competitive markets. So we'll look at the behavior of firms or the behavior of a firm in a perfectly competitive market. The In this topic, we'll be looking at we are going to look at what output a firm should produce, a perfectly competitive firm should produce, given by the market price of the commodity and its cost structure to be able to maximize profit. And in the process, or at the end of the day, we want to establish the supply curve of the firm, which in turn will give us the supply curve of the market. Because if you know the supply curve of one firm, and we have n firms, it's all like to get the market supply, we need to sum the individual market supplies to get the individual supply curves to be able to arrive at the market supply curve. So when we're looking at the markets and supply, demand, and equilibrium price, we realize that any institutional arrangement that brings buyers and sellers together constitute a market. A market could be a physical location or it could be virtual. And when we are talking about markets, we are talking about market for a product, not for all products. So we talk about, let's say, tomatoes. So we are looking at the market for tomatoes. The buyers, how buyers and sellers of tomatoes come together to trade. Cocoa market, we talk about producers and buyers of cocoa. So when we talk about market in economics, we are interested in a collection of buyers and sellers of a particular product. Now, when we talk about perfectly competitive firm or perfectly competitive market, we are referring to a market where demand and supply operate without any interference. In a perfectly competitive market, no market participant can influence the price of the commodity. So both demand and supply collectively determine the price of the market of the products in question. For a market to be called perfectly competitive, it must meet some assumptions, or there are some assumptions that is beliefs that we hold that or the beliefs we think must hold for a market to be called perfectly competitive one. When you're reading some textbooks, they refer to a perfectly competitive market as just perfect competition. So when you are reading and you come across the word perfect competition, they are simply referring to perfectly competitive markets. The first assumption is that in a perfectly competitive market, there should be large numbers of buyers and sellers. What this seeks to ensure is that no individual market participant can influence the price of the commodity. The second one is that the products sold by the firms are homogeneous. That is, the products are so close to each other that it's difficult to distinguish between the output of one firm and that of the other. So the products are almost the same. That is what is meant by homogeneity. Then the third assumption is that firms are free to enter and exit that perfectly competitive market costlessly. That is, it shouldn't cost any firm to enter or to exit. It shouldn't cost the firm any extra cost to enter or exit the industry. Then there should be no government regulation. The perfectly competitive must be allowed to operate purely on the basis of demand and supply. There should be no government control there. Then factors of production must also be perfectly mobile. That is, they can move from one firm to the other. And no single firm can have control over the factors of production. Then there should be perfect information about the prices of products to the consumers. Consumers must have perfect information about the price of the products and its quality. Then the price of the raw materials or the production or factors of production should be known to all firms in the industry or the owners of factors of production, because firms need to buy inputs from the input market to be able to produce. So both the owners of the inputs and the firms who operate in that market must have full information about the price of the inputs to be used for production. Then the final one is the goal of all firms is profit maximization. So firms in a perfectly competitive market aim at profit maximization. We'll now look at the short run equilibrium of the firm. So we'll look at the particular firm operating in a perfectly competitive market. How do the firms behave? The assumptions of large numbers of sellers and product homogeneity imply that the individual firms in perfectly competitive market is a price taker. How this means is that the producers in a perfectly competitive market do not influence the price of the commodity. They just take the price determined by the market and they produce in order to maximize their profit. So they don't determine the price at which the commodity should be sold. That is what we mean by price taker. Because the firm cannot influence how much the product should be sold, the demand facing the firm is perfectly elastic, in a sense that at a given price, the firm can sell whatever quantity it wants to sell. It cannot vary the price. So the price is like a horizontal line, which is constant over whatever amount of output the firm wants to sell. Because the firm cannot vary the price, anytime the firm wants to make an extra money, it has to sell the commodity at the same price. Therefore, in a perfectly competitive market, the price of the commodity is the same as the marginal revenue. The marginal revenue is the extra revenue the firm makes as it sells more output. And in a perfectly competitive market, because the firm cannot influence the price of the commodity, it can sell whatever quantity it wants at that market price. So any extra output that will be sold at the same price. For that matter, the price is the same as the marginal revenue in the case of a perfectly competitive firm. So in a perfectly competitive, the demand curve of the individual firm is also its average revenue. The average revenue is simply total revenue divided by the amount of output sold. And as I said earlier, it's the same as the marginal revenue curve of the firm. So this is how the demand curve of a perfectly competitive firm looks like. It's a horizontal line parallel to the output axis, indicating that no matter the output sold, the price is the same. So, or at a given price level, so and so amount of output can be sold. An infinite amount of output can be sold. The price will not change. It's the same. As we have started looking at in this course, we look at the market, where we look at demand and supply, how they interact to determine the price of the commodity. So the topic that followed price determination was to see how the market demand is derived. So we derive that by looking at profit maximization, utility maximization of the individual. Based on that, we derive the demand curve of the individual. And if you sum the individual demand curves, we will get the market demand curve. On the other hand, we also need to derive the market supply curve. So we derive the market supply curve by summing the individual supply curves. How do we get the individual supply curves? We get it when the individuals maximize profit. The individual firms are profit maximizers, so we derive the supply curve from that profit maximization problem. So once we got the demand curve, the next thing we have to do is to derive the market supply curve. So the ultimate aim of this topic is to derive the market supply. So if you derive the supply curve of an individual firm, when you sum all the firms operating in that industry, then you can get the market supply. So that we know how we come by the supply curve. Then together, if you combine supply and the demand, you can see how the market operates. So the profit of a firm is defined as total revenue minus total cost. Total revenue minus total cost. And total revenue is the price the item is being sold times the quantity that is sold. And the cost at which this output is produced is the total cost. A firm in this course, our focus is to look at the short run situation. We look at the short run production, which translates to short run cost. So in the profit function, we have total revenue minus total cost. Because we are dealing with the short run cost, our focus in this topic is to look at the short run profit of the firm. So firms in a short run equilibrium can find themselves in a situation where they are making excess profits, which some people call abnormal or supernormal profits. They could also be making losses, or they could be breaking even. Breaking even is also the same as zero economic profits. The firm is earning zero economic, meaning the firm is just earning enough to keep the entrepreneur in business. That is what we mean by zero economic profit. Meaning if the entrepreneur were to be working elsewhere, he or she should be earning the same amount he's earning from his company. So he's not getting any extra income. That is what we mean by zero economic profit. So we define what a profit is, or what an economic profit, loss, or break even is. When the total revenue is less than the total cost, then a loss is made. When total revenue is more than total revenue is the income you generate when you sell products. So total revenue is greater than the total cost, then economic profit is made, or abnormal or supernormal profit is made. But if total revenue is equal to total cost, then you say the firm breaks even, meaning the firm is not making a loss. It's also not making abnormal or supernormal profits. Let's look at how the equilibrium output is determined by the firm. That is, what level of output should the firm produce in order to maximize profits? That is what we want to look at. I will use this diagram to show that. This diagram shows the cost and the price the firm is facing. I've said earlier that the price the firm sells its output is not determined by the firm. It is outside the control of the firm. So the firm has to look at its own structure, its own cost structure, then compare it to the price that it has to sell the output. Because as you produce an output, you incur a cost. So you look at how much it costs you to produce an output and how much you will get when you sell that output. That is what is comparing the cost and the revenue is all to determine whether the firm should produce a particular level of output that to maximize profit or not. In a perfectly competitive market, a firm achieves an equilibrium when the extra revenue you get which is marginal revenue. And in the case of a perfectly competitive market, the marginal revenue is the same as the price of the commodity, must be equal to the marginal cost. What this simply means is that the extra output you produce comes at a cost. That extra cost should be equal to the extra revenue that you get when you sell that output. And that is how to maximize the profit of the firm in the short run. So let's take a look at this diagram. Look at X prime E, the first level of output. At the first level of output, we can see that price intersects the marginal cost, so it is an equilibrium situation. But will profit be maximized at that equilibrium situation? This is a question we'll answer as we go along. Let's assume that the firm moves a step forward to the right beyond X prime E. You realize that when the firm goes to the right, not even up to XE, but in between, you realize that the firm you realize that the firm you realize that the extra cost, which is the marginal cost the firm will incur by producing an extra output, is always lower than the price or the revenue the firm will sell, the extra revenue the firm will generate by selling that output, which is the price. So you can see that the price is always above the marginal cost. What it means is that if the firm should produce an extra output, the extra cost it will incur will be lower than the extra revenue it will generate. And when we continue with that all the way to point XE, we realize that at point XE, the marginal cost is also equal to the marginal revenue. So we have 2 points on the graph where marginal cost is equal to the price of the commodity, which is the same as the marginal revenue. But if you go beyond point XE, you will realize that it will cost the firm more because the marginal cost will begin to rise. So it will cost the firm more to produce that output than it will sell. So if you go beyond point XE, you realize that the marginal cost of production is higher than the marginal revenue that is derived when that extra output is produced and sold. So it doesn't make sense to cost you more to produce an output, but you get less revenue. Therefore, it doesn't make sense to go beyond point XE. So the equilibrium point for the firm to produce an output that will maximize its profit is the output level XE. XE prime is not the optimal level of output that will maximize the firm's profit, because the firm can always make extra profit by producing more beyond that point. But at point XE, there is no tendency for the firm to move away from that level, because if you go to the right, you will be getting higher marginal cost than marginal revenue. If you move to the left too, you will realize that you make more money, you make more money, or you'll be making more money than the extra cost it will you have to incur to produce the item. So there is no need going back, and there's no need going forward. So once there is tendency for the firm not to move from a point, then that becomes the equilibrium point. Generally speaking, for a firm to be in a short run equilibrium in a perfectly competitive market, price, which is equal to marginal revenue, must be equal to marginal cost. And at the output level where the price is equal to the marginal revenue, the marginal cost must be rising at that output level. So you can see that if you compare point output level XE and the X prime E, you realize that the marginal cost is rising at the output level XE. So that is the equilibrium output level that the firm must produce in order to maximize profits. If you can always calculate this because if you multiply price times XE, that will give you total revenue. If you draw a line from XE that touches a short run average cost and you project it to the vertical axis, that will give you the average cost. So average cost times output will give you total cost. You know the total cost is you know that total cost divided by output is equal to the average cost. Therefore, average cost times output will give you the total cost. So if you subtract the total revenue minus total cost, you will get your profit. But you realize that if you calculate that for all the output levels from below XE, the profit will always be lower than that you obtain when you produce XE. Any output below XE will give a smaller profit than the output level that we produce at XE. You can just draw this the diagram and see how that will work out. Now, as I've said earlier, a firm in a perfectly competitive market in the short run can be making losses, breaking even, or making economic supernormal or abnormal profits. In a perfectly competitive market, the firm doesn't determine the price at which it has to sell its apple. So it is the market that determines the price. And you looking at the market price and your cost structure, you decide what output to produce in order to maximize profits. So in the first case, we have the market equilibrium on the right, which is determining the price. So the price the firm charges is what is coming from the market. So what is on the left in this diagram is the situation of the firm. What is on the right is the market situation. So the market is determining the price at which the firm is going to sell its output. Now, the firm will achieve equilibrium at point XE, and when that happens, see that the total revenue will be price times XE, and the total cost will be AC times XE. You can see the total revenue is more than what total cost, so the firm is making profit. And the shaded area is the amount of the profit the firm is making. So anytime the price is higher than the average cost, the firm will be making abnormal profits. This is a case where the firm is making or is breaking even or making just normal profits. So in this case, the diagram on the right is the market situation determining the price at which the firm must sell its output. And the price at which the firm is selling its output is just equal to the average cost of production. So in the end, the total cost is equal to total revenue. So the firm is earning zero economic profit. This is the case where the firm is making losses. Here you can see that the average cost of the firm is very, very high. Looking at the market price is P, determined by the market. So meanwhile, the firm's cost is very high. So in that process, the average cost at the equilibrium is higher than the price. So the total cost is higher than total revenue. So the firm will make a loss. If you look at many of the state-owned enterprises in Ghana, they always make losses. Why? Because the cost of production is always higher than the total revenue the firms generate. So that will result in a loss situation. When in the short run, when a firm is not even producing, it has to pay its fixed cost. So if the firm decides to produce, the operating costs should at least be covered. That is, the amount of money it costs you to buy raw materials, employ labor in order to produce. When you sell the output, it should be enough to pay for the variable. It should be enough. The revenue you generate should be enough to pay for the cost of production, which is the variable cost. But if you are unable, if you produce an output level that doesn't allow you to sell the product and generate enough revenue to pay for the variable cost, then it doesn't make sense to produce at all. Because it's like going to buy cement, sand, and hire labor and buy electricity to produce blocks. And it costs you some amount of money to do this production. When you produce the item and sell them, the money you generate is not even enough to pay for the cost of the raw materials and direct labor, which is the variable cost. In such a case, you see that you'll be making losses by producing. And if you are not able to cover your variable costs, then there is no sense in going to produce, because what it means is that your your business operating capital will be eaten away gradually. It's a matter of time it will vanish. So this is illustrated in the diagram here. So the distance from the short run average cost to the output level, output axis, is the total average cost, and this average cost is comprised of the average variable cost and the average fixed cost. From X all the way to the point C constitutes the short run average variable cost. That is the variable cost, total variable cost. So that's the average variable cost. If you multiply it by the output level, then you'll be getting the total variable cost. That is the cost of operating a business. So the distance between the short run average cost and the short run average variable cost is the average fixed cost. Now, we know that whether you produce or not, fixed cost is constant. You have to incur it. But the issue has to do with the variable cost. So if you are going to produce and the production cannot cover the variable cost, then there is no sense to remain in business. And the variable cost starts from 0 to PC. So the PC is the price at which the commodity is being sold, and in this case, is the same as the average variable cost. What it means is that if the price should go below the PC, then the firm will not be able to generate enough revenue to cover its variable cost. Therefore, the firm must shut down. And that can happen only when the output level is below XC, or when the price falls below PC. Or when the price falls below PC, the firm, if the price should fall below, if the output produced should fall below XC, then the price must also fall, so that an equilibrium will be established, because the price must always be equal to what? The marginal cost for an equilibrium output to be produced. So anything below XC, the price must fall to meet the marginal cost for a new output level to be determined over there. And you can see that when that happens, the price the firm will be receiving for the product is below the average cost of production. And for that matter, there is no sense in the firm to be in business. So the firm has to shut down. So any output level below XC, the firm has to close down. Or any price below PC, the firm has to close down, because it will not be able to cover its operational costs. This is very important in determining the short run supply curve of the firm, because the firm will only produce an output uh, from the point C upwards, that is producing xc to the right. The firm will only produce output uh, from the C upwards, or from the xc to the right. Any output below that the firm will not produce. So the short run marginal cost will start from that point, the point where the price is equal to what? The average variable cost. So at the minimum point of the average variable cost, where the marginal cost cuts the short run average cost, is where the firm's supply curve will start from. Now, in a very perfectly competitive market where there is full employment, for you to be able to produce more outputs, you need to buy inputs, or you need to poach inputs from other firms. Now, for you to poach uh, inputs from other firms, you must be ready to pay more for those inputs. It's just like working for Unilever, which is paying you some money, like Coca-Cola is paying you, but Coca-Cola wants to produce more, so he wants to poach you from Unilever. Coca-Cola must be ready to what? Pay you more. So it will cost Coca-Cola more cost in order to what? Employ you. But if Coca-Cola should do that, what it also means is that the output you are going to produce must be sold at a higher price to be able to cover the cost. So as more output is produced, the cost of production goes up. So the marginal cost goes up. And we have said that equilibrium in a perfectly competitive market is established when the price is equal to the marginal revenue, which is equal to what? The marginal cost. So all the intersection between price and marginal cost constitutes an equilibrium situation. So to produce higher outputs, you have to incur higher marginal cost, which must also result in higher marginal revenue, which is the same as higher price. And so all those will constitute an equilibrium situation. Now, supply curve is simply output price output combination that a firm that is maximizing profit must produce. So you can see that when the firm is producing X1, it is maximizing profit because price is equal to marginal cost. When the firm is producing X2, price 2 is still equal to the marginal cost, but at a higher level. When the firm is producing X3, the equilibrium will be established when the P3 is equal to the marginal cost. And this will continue all the way to the R, where the firm will be producing output level X4 and charging the price P4. So on this the marginal cost, we have equilibrium situations there because price is equal to marginal cost, which is equal to marginal revenue. So we have equilibrium situations there. So any point on the marginal cost, the firm will be maximizing profit. So the price output combinations that maximizes that profit for the firm is the short run supply curve of the firm. So if you look closely at the diagram, you can see that this is happening at the as the portion of the marginal cost that is above short run average variable cost. Look at it closely. We have said that any price uh, below the variable cost the firm will not produce. So the firm supply will only start from the portion of the marginal cost where it is above the short run average variable cost. That is, so in any of those, so the red line you are seeing there constitute the supply of the firm, the short run supply of a perfectly competitive firm. Supply is simply price output combinations. And in the case of a perfectly competitive firm, these price output combinations maximize profit at each level. So the marginal cost curve is the firm's supply curve. Now, if you have many firms, all that you have to do is to sum all the marginal cost curves of the various. So at each price level, you have various quantities of outputs produced by each firm. So you add at a given price, you add all the outputs each firm will produce at that price. If you add them together over the different price, so as the price changes, firms will produce various levels of output again. You add them together. So at the end of the day, if you look at the price against total output produced by the firms, then and you plot it, you'll be arriving at the market supply curve. So this is how we derive the market supply curve of the industry. So with that, we can combine it with the demand curve to determine the overall market price of the product. So in summary, output is produced from the level where price is at least greater than average variable cost. The price should be equal to the average variable cost. It cannot be lower than it. Then at as I explained at Q1, P1 is equal to SMC. At Q2, P2 is equal to SMC. At Q3, P3 is equal to MC, and at Q4, P4 is equal to SMC. Output will be produced at all these equilibrium points. Therefore, the supply curve of a firm in a perfectly competitive market is, in the short run, is the same as the short run marginal cost curve above the shutdown point, since these points correspond to price quantity equilibrium coordinates. The sum of the individual short run marginal cost curves give us the market supply curve. I think with this we should be coming to the end of price and output determination, and for that matter the market supply curve determination of a perfectly competitive market. Thank you, and see you in the next class.